The second day of the 16th BRICS Summit is underway in the Russian city of Kazan, where more than 20 world leaders and 30 delegations are discussing strategies for building a new, fairer and more democratic international order. In Cuba, the government achieves the synchronization of the national electric system while continuing with the efforts for the recovery of the electric service at national level. And in Israel, the human rights organization B'Tselem denounced an ethnic cleansing in Northern Gaza. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The second day of the 16th BRICS Summit has begun in the Russian city of Kazan, where more than 20 world leaders and 30 delegations are discussing strategies for building a new, fairer and more democratic international order. Under the motto "Strengthening Multilateralism for Equitable Global Development and Security," the head of state and governments of more than 8 billion citizens in the world participate in the summit. In addition to the inaugural event, the first day of the summit featured important bilateral meetings where issues related to peace in the Middle East, opportunities to boost the economies of the Global South, and alliances to strengthen the security of sovereignties were discussed. Heads of state, such as the President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, and the President of Bolivia, Luis Arce, are expected to arrive. In this context, the President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, arrived on Tuesday in the city of Kazan to attend the BRICS Summit, where he seeks to broaden participation with a view to the world economic development. Upon his arrival, the President stressed that Venezuela participates in the international activity as part of the immense efforts of its leaders for the construction of a new multipolar order. Nicolas Maduro made references to Venezuela's perspective in contributing to the new global era. Moreover, the head of state underlined that this is the first time that Venezuela attends as a guest to a BRICS summit, and added that it is part of the energetic gear of the new pluricentric world that is being born. And to go deep into the relevance of this multilateral event, we invite US-based journalist and activist Jamir Shabur, member of the Troika Collective. Hi, Jamir. Welcome to From the South.
Hi, Andrea, right?
Andrea, thank you.
Yes, Andrea. Thank you for having me on the South in teleSUR.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So let's start with what to expect from the BRICS Summit in the face of the uncertain international scenario marked by war, conflicts, and politically motivated unilateral measures imposed by powerful nations to developing countries.
Well, so I think right now what's occurring in Russia is a gathering of many of these countries in the global South. As we know, BRICS is something that has been around for about almost 2 decades. I mean, started in 2006 with a union of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then also South Africa. This is where you get the acronym BRICS. That basically it's a South by South cooperation economic bloc in order to fight the hegemon of the US dollar, which is mostly the trade worldwide. So this is a way for countries that have big economies, like such as Brazil or such as Russia or China, in order to come together and figure out ways to diversify the world economy in order for their economies not to rely on the US dollars. And this type of proposal has attracted many other different countries in the world economy, whether it's countries in Latin America like Bolivia or Venezuela, which are more left-leaning and anti-imperialist countries, or those that are not so towards the left. I believe you have countries like Saudi Arabia that want to also be part of the BRICS, and many other different African states as well. So this right now is very interesting at a time where we're seeing how we see capitalism in crisis, how we're seeing the dollar being plunged right now. And due to this, we see wars happening, manifesting, whether we see it in the Ukraine or in the Middle East, what's happening right now with the genocide being imposed by the state of Israel with the help of the United States. So we're seeing this kind of being a way of trying to respond to all of these economic crises that we're seeing worldwide.
Yamir, how could this summit mark a before and an after in economic redefinition?
I think this right here, this summit could bring about multipolarity. It could bring about an alternative to the U.S. dollar. Basically, trying to figure out ways of how global South countries could create a different form of trade, which is outside of the dollar, in order to bring about the multipolar world, in order for like other countries, whether they have projects for their countries or even in their regions, whether we could say like in Iran or in China or the Middle East, or as well as Latin America, have their own be able to have the space, the economic space, in order to have the social and political space to create development for their countries and their regions.
Latin America, this summit is especially remarkable. Just a couple of days after the closure of this summit, from New York, where you are at this moment, the National Assembly will vote on the resolution presented by Cuba against the U.S. blockade. Can the BRICS support Cuba's claim?
For sure. I believe that right now what we're seeing with the BRICS, and especially when we're seeing with this BRICS summit in Russia, and seeing that these Latin American states, Bolivia, Venezuela, having Nicolas Maduro there, being one of the first Venezuelan presidents to ever attend a BRICS summit, and also Cuba, demonstrating how like this is also very important for Latin America, in the sense of how Latin America is right next to the United States. It's south of the United States, and because of like the whole so close. I think there's a saying in Mexico, like there's so far from God and so close from the United States. And I say this type of phrase is because a lot of countries in Latin America rely on the U.S. dollar, most of the economies, and this is why the United States could utilize its influence in many countries due to neoliberal policies that have the business and the commerce in every country rely on the U.S. dollar. And this is also another reason why the United States can utilize its economic system and can weaponize it against countries they're in disagreements with, whether that's sanctions on Venezuela, sanctions on Nicaragua, or the long-standing 60-year blockade on Cuba, the genocidal blockade on Cuba, that they have tried to suffocate Cuba for so long, because Cuba decided to have its own path in 1959 with its glorious revolution. But because of that, Cuba has been punished, and the United States utilizes its economic system and the BRICS could give help to Cuba, could demonstrate, like states, like countries like Cuba and like Venezuela and now like Nicaragua, that are affected by economic blockades. It could help them create alternatives in order for them to rely on a new economic system, in order for their projects, whether that's the Cuban Revolution or the Bolivarian Revolution or the Sandinista Revolution, to flourish within the region. And also within the respective countries. And now, as we see, next week is the annual UN general vote on the Cuban blockade, and we always see every year, as we saw last year, how there was many countries that are in support of Cuba's um like right and self-determination and are against the blockade. And these are countries also that are not always like socialist or leftist, but they support that Cuba should not have this blockade, while you always have the same two countries, the United States and the state of Israel, that vote in favor for the blockade. And then last year also you had one country that abstained, which was Ukraine. Of course, it's an ally of the United States and Israel in this whole global chess piece. But with this BRICS summit, I think that this also, like when we have this thing coming up on the UN vote, this also helps Cuba's case and how and helps Cuba garner more support for next week with other states from the global south in order to support the efforts of the Cuban people to finally end and get rid of this 60-year-old genocidal blockade.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you for having me.
We were listening to US-based journalist and activist Yamir Shabur, member of the Troika Collective, in the context of the 16th BRICS Summit held in the Russian city of Kazan. And after this interview, let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Kazan, Russia, the BRICS Summit continues on its second day. So let's see some details from our correspondent, Yunus Suner. Hi, Yunus, what are the highlights of today?
Good afternoon from the city of Kazan here in the Russian Federation, where the 16th summit of the BRICS alliance is continuing. Today, the day started with a group photo of the leaders who then continued to their first restricted and then expanded meeting. Parts of the meeting were open to the public, where the public, the global opinion, the global public could listen to their speeches. The introductory speech was held by the Russian President Vladimir Putin, of course, as the President per tempore, who mentioned the outlines, the strategy of Russia in the presidency, and acknowledged that they achieved 85% of the goals they had set in the beginning of the presidency. He underlined that the BRICS alliance forms the future of humanity, and also emphasized, proposed that there is a huge number of countries who would like to join the alliance, that the alliance cannot neglect that interest. At the same time, it needs to strike a balance with the BRICS effectiveness. Thus, it needs to find the modus how to define which countries can enter the alliance, the proposal of the Russian President Vladimir Putin should be included in the final declaration of the summit. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also spoke about this expansion topic, and he said that he observed great efficiency of BRICS integrating the new members, which have taken part in this session the first time with their presidents, that is Iran, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and Egypt were all present in the session. Other topics in the discussion were presented by the Chinese president, for instance, who demanded that in Ukraine there should not be a further escalation. Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, remembered that China and Brazil had initiated a process to find a diplomatic solution, but she also emphasized the concept of indivisible security. That is, all agreements need to take in account Russia's need for security. That means Russia's need for security from NATO expansion. Of course, this is how it's meant here in Russia and how it's understood in Beijing as well. Further topics were, as already before the summit were announced, the trade in national currencies, which was urged by the Brazilian President Lula, who connected himself from Brazil via Zoom because he had an injury, and also supported by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who proposed that India already had a cross-border payment system that others might consider to use. The Russian president, of course, also underlined the need for using national currencies and cross-border payment systems, which was also applauded by Dilma Rousseff, the chairwoman of the New Development Bank, the bank that is connected to BRICS. That bank was another focus. Here, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that there will be a new investment platform within the NDB. That means the NDB will provide further funds for developmental investment, and he was applauded by other representatives from Africa, from South Africa, who said that NDB was actually a reaction to the failure of the Bretton Woods system of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, the Western-dominated financial institutions. So this is another topic. And an additional one was the issue of artificial intelligence. Here, Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed a BRICS alliance for artificial intelligence to prevent its use in illegal ways. This is a diplomatic reference, of course, to the use of this technology both in Ukraine but also in Palestine by Western forces against civilian population. And he was supported by Chinese President Xi Jinping, who used the formula that we need a revolution in the understanding of productive forces, and proposed to share technology, to share the science of artificial intelligence. This was another important issue. The leaders, after the leaders, the different sections of the BRICS alliance, BRICS Council, Business Council Club, and the BRICS Women Representation, among others, BRICS Regional Cities Association, they all presented their reports, as well as did Dilma Rousseff, their yearly reports of activities, also in preparation for the next year's presidency by Brazil. And today the meeting, the summit, will continue. Meanwhile, the leaders have several bilateral meetings with each other. For instance, the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has arrived. He will meet here Russian President Vladimir Putin, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Ukrainian President Lukashenko, among others, and the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, will also keep on having bilateral contact. So it's also a good opportunity for the leaders to meet up personally and to exchange their views on different bilateral and global matters. This is going to continue with tonight with a ceremony, an official ceremony, and tomorrow, on the third day of the summit, will be the part BRICS Plus, where the countries will come to talk who would like to join or would like to have a partner status in the alliance.
Thank you, Yunus, for all the details. We will contact you again soon. We were with Yunus Sunar, a special envoy in Kazan, Russia, where the BRICS Summit continued on its second day. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Israel, the human rights organization B'Tselem denounced an ethnic cleansing in Northern Gaza. The well-known Israeli non-governmental organization claims that the relentless offensive, in addition to starving thousands of people and depriving the sick of medical care to levels that defy comprehension, has isolated Northern Gaza from the world. The organization emphasizes that it is clearer than ever that Israel intends to forcibly displace the residents of Northern Gaza by committing some of the most serious crimes under international law. In this regard, the organization also called on the international community to act immediately to stop the mass killings and the sufferings of civilians. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.